So 4.2, as Holly mentioned, is new out today. Everybody who owns Vico Office will have received a notification this morning that 4.2 is ready for download. And 4.2 includes updated publishers, so we now support the latest versions of BIM applications, improved Tekla Structures integration, the main topic of today's demonstration. Changed activation options, and what that means will become clear during the demonstration. And we have an improved task manager, and I'm sure that will be welcomed by many of our existing users who've been linking their model-based quantities and model-based costs to location-based schedules. Significant part of this webinar is Tekla Structures version 19, and before I start the demonstration I have to say that I'm not an expert in Tekla Structures, but thanks to our colleagues in Tekla I've been able to ramp up quickly, and I am able to work with the model and show you today what things you can do to really create a powerful connection to the Vico Office project. So the Tekla Model Organizer is a new interface to the model that you create in Tekla Structures. It's a very easy to use a window in which you can define subdivisions of your building, so the logical areas that you see over here in the top of the dialog, just by selecting elements and associating it with a story or with a section. How that is used in the workflow will become clear pretty quickly when we do the demonstration. Classifying elements helps you to prepare the model for use in Vico Office. So by defining these object types in the model organizer, you prepare those elements for their behavior, the expected behavior in the Vico Office environment. So when we say we associate elements in the Tekla model with the slab object type, they know that they need to behave as slab object types in Vico Office as well, which means that the correct quantity calculation rules will be applied to them. The Vico activation options, and current users of Vico Office will see a slight change in the user interface over here on the left side, and I'll explain more in a little bit. We've increased the number of properties that are available for activation of Tekla models. So we used to have 3 properties. We're up to 19 properties now, which really unleashes Tekla's BIM power. There's so much information that can be stored in Tekla models. You see some examples of dialogues of the elements that were selected in the model over here. That information can now be used to group and sort your elements so that you create the takeoff items in such a way that they're ready to be used to be plugged in into your cost plan. So in the demonstration, we will look at a model in Tekla. The model elements are going to be grouped and labeled using some of the properties available in the dialogues that I just showed. And we'll publish and activate, and I'll actually repeat that a couple of times. So I will publish once, but I'll activate a couple of times to show how flexible this new solution now is, how you can create several varieties of groupings with the same model. And we'll verify the quantities using the takeoff manager, so making sure that all of the groups are as expected and highlighting as we expect them to use in the cost plan. And we'll actually build a cost plan, and we'll create some versions, and at the end we'll put everything together in the new task manager with some improvements that speed up the work with the linkage, and then quickly create a flow line schedule that then results in the 4D simulation. So let's switch over to the Tekla application. Opening that up here, we've got a model on the screen, and what you can see here to the left is the model organizer that I just showed on the slide in the PowerPoint. And when I select any of these elements in the model, I can open the properties and look at the information that's been defined. So we've got this element is its name is footing. The shape or the profile is 300 by 600. And we've got a material and a class as well, so the class is just a number 8. When I publish that model into Vico Office, I'm using this button over here, Publish to Vico Office. Now what you do when you work on a model is you probably stage your work. You're probably not going to complete that model all at once. You want to focus on the foundation first and then do the first level of the structure, maybe subdivide it by zones, etc., etc. The logical areas over here help you quickly select those elements that you want to push out to Vico Office. Maybe the foundation is ready to be estimated. Maybe that is information that your estimator in the team is waiting for. So what I've done in here is I simply selected the elements that belong to this foundation story, and I can right-click on that item and say Add to Selected Category, and that creates a predefined group that I can use at any point in time. So let me go ahead and click that story foundation, and I press the button Publish to Vico Office. That opens up the dialog that gives me access to the Vico project server with all of the projects that are currently in the Vico projects database. And then I can pick from the list of projects which project I want to publish to. Now that happens to be the Fridays with Trimble project. I open that up to see which model I want to publish that to, and the name that I want to include it in is Foundation. I did that before the webinar, and I'm opening up the Vico Office application to see where that ended in Vico Office. So we got the project list here in the Vico Office dashboard. As you can see, we're working in release 4.2, as mentioned earlier, released today. I've got this project open, Fridays with Trimble, and I'm working in the cost planner profile. We will switch to the schedule planner profile in a moment once we get to that point where we're ready to associate cost items with the scheduled tasks. And by clicking on the model register workflow item, I open the list of models that I currently have in my project. And as you can see, there's a description Foundation in here. That is the part of the Tekla project that I selected and published into Vico Office, and not the whole model from Tekla, but only those elements that were selected. You can see that that option in the dialog in Tekla over here. So there's a new check mark over here that says Publish Selected Objects Only, which gives you that filtered view that lets you stage the work for modeling purposes. So in the model register, with the model on the right side, I've got a number of versions here, and when I select one of these models that I've published, the buttons over here for model operations becomes active, and there's a new button here that's called Change Activation Options. When you click that, you see the list of all of the properties that are now available for Tekla models. All of the other dialogues for the other supported BIM applications have changed as well and have similar functionality. Let me start by selecting the profile property that we looked at earlier. So the 300 by 600 was the profile of the foundation beam. That's what I'm going to use initially to see what kind of takeoff items I'm going to have when I activate that way. When I click OK, the activation options are stored, and before the first activation I need to click Activate Model. Once it is activated for the first time, I'm just clicking Create Takeoff Items, and that refreshes, that updates the list of takeoff items. Now let me go to the takeoff model workflow item to see what that list looks like. So I now have the groups of elements based on the profiles that were defined in Tekla. And here we see the 300 by 600, 700 by 1400. Clicking on each of these items will result in highlighting them in the 3D model. I think this is not descriptive enough. I'm missing some information to be able to easily link or use these takeoff items and takeoff quantities in my cost plan. I'm just going to go ahead and delete these items. I want to start with a clean sheet. And I'm going back to the model register to change the options by which I'm activating. So I'm selecting the foundation again, and then hit the change activation options. And what I want to do is actually use the part name as well. But, and this is also new in release 4.2, I don't want to have that after the profile name. I want to have it before the profile name. I can now move this up into the list and say part name needs to be before profile, and that's how I want to name my takeoff items. I go ahead and click OK to save those settings, and then I simply hit the Create Takeoff Items button again. And then we're going back to the takeoff model to look at what that list is. So now we've got footing. That part name was footing. The part name here is pile, and that gives me a much more descriptive name for the takeoff items. Makes it easier for me to link those up to takeoff quantities later on. Now each of these will have behavior that is associated with the object class that we looked at in Tekla earlier. So those piles are columns, and that's because the object type in Tekla, the assigned object type, was column. Therefore, the quantity calculation rules applied to this takeoff item will be based on column quantity calculation rules. For the footings, we have slab calculation rules, and those result in the quantities that we can then use for cost estimating and schedule planning purposes. When I work in the cost plan, and let me move over to the cost plan for a moment, I would like to use standard definitions that let me use these unit format codes, which is part of the data pack that's available from the Vico side. So we've got a code over here, which is a takeoff item named B1011-025, which is just a serial number, and then a short description. What I would really like to do is name my elements in the Tekla environment in such a way that those are the names for the takeoff items. So for the beams, I would like to call those this name. For the pile caps, I would like to use the pile cap description, A1012-003 pile cap. Now in Tekla, I don't want to use, let me quickly select the pile cap, open the properties. I don't want to use any of these because from Tekla I want to continue to generate my reports as I used to do. So I don't want to change the name. I want to keep that to footing. Now the great thing about working in the Tekla environment is that there's a ton of user-defined attributes that you can create as well. So what I've done is I have used user field 1 and just copied the description that is expected from the cost planner into user field 1, as you can see here. After I did that, I went ahead and published that same model again into Vico Office, and now I'm going to use the user-defined field number 1 to establish that connection. So let's go back to Vico Office. I am opening the model register again, and instead of using that combination of two properties in the change activation options, I'm going to remove these two check marks, and I'm going to select the user field 1 instead, and I click OK. Before I reactivate, I just clean out the existing list of takeoff items in the takeoff model, and you don't delete the model elements. I only delete the grouping that I have here defined as takeoff items. So I delete selected, and as you can see, the model elements are still there. They're just not grouped in any way. I'm going back to the model register and hit the Create Takeoff Items button again. That regroups all of my elements, and in the takeoff model we should then see the names that we actually needed as input for the cost plan. So now we've got a completely different grouping based on the expected input for cost planning purposes. Now let's go back to the model register and also activate the superstructure. So each of the submodels that you publish from Tekla, so the selected elements that result in a new entry in the model register, can be activated in a different way. So if you would want to use user field 1 for everything in the foundation, but user field 3 for everything in the superstructure, that's possible. You can do that. So let's change the activation option. I did use the user field 1 for the superstructure as well, so I just leave that as is. Click OK, and then go ahead and activate that model too. And we will see that all of the superstructure now appears in our model. Now the only one missing is the roof structure that we had in there too. So let's go back to Tekla and cancel for the properties dialog, and I'm selecting the roof story, which selects everything in here. Can make sure that everything is included by only showing the selected. That is the case. That is everything that I need to complete the quantity takeoff. So therefore, I hit the Publish to Vico button in the Tekla toolbar, which again opens the connection to the Vico project server. I pick the project that I want to publish to, which was the Fridays with Trimble project that we just worked in. And then in that project, I don't want to publish to an existing one. So we saw the superstructure and foundation earlier. I want to create a new entry. I want to create a new model. And again, I only want to publish the selected objects. We'll go ahead and publish these items. And back over to Vico Office, we now got a new entry. And by default, it receives the name of the model that we saw in Tekla. We can change that to roof in here so that we have it available for filtering purposes later on. Can show that quickly in the filtering panel. The document names are shown in here as well. So we've got foundation and superstructure already. Once I activate the roof, that will appear in there as well. So for the roof, of course, as well, we need to specify what the activation options need to be. And for that, I also use the user field 1. I click OK, and then go ahead and activate that model. And that shows the roof structure in Vico now too. So now we've got our quantity takeoff completed. Let's make sure that those takeoff items are what we expected them to be. And for that, we use the takeoff model workflow item. And these are all the takeoff items that were created from the model. So we've got our cast in place concrete here. Maybe that's actually wall panels, steel columns. We can isolate the elements just like we can do on the Tekla side to make sure that those are the ones that should be included. And that seems to be the case for all of these. We've got our quantities. So as soon as we've validated all this, we can continue and go into the cost banner to use these quantities. So in planned cost, because we copied all of our properties from the formula that we got from the data pack that we wanted to use, these line items automatically detect their quantities. So for the slab, we've got a slab quantity through that takeoff item that we labeled as such in Tekla. So by looking at what the requirement is from the cost planning side, labeling your Tekla content that way, you prepare your model in such a way that it can be consumed by estimators straight away.